So the steps are 12 and 2/3 plus 13 and 1/5. So you're first going to find the common denominator, which is 15. You multiply this by 3, you multiply this by 5. Anything you do to this denominator, you do to this denominator, so this becomes 10. And anything you do to this denominator, you do to this one. This becomes 3. Now that we have the same denominator, you add the numerators, 13/15. Then you add anything over here. 3 plus 2 is 5, 1 plus 1 is 2. And then we just make sure that this is as simplified as it could be. So this is 25 and 13/15. Sometimes we have to simplify it, and sometimes we have to make it into a mixed number. So you just have to make sure it's in its simplest form. Okay, for this one right here, we have to do 3 3/4 minus 4/5. So you're going to find the common denominator, and we're subtracting here. So this we would do times 5. Anything you do to the denominator, you do to the numerator. So this becomes 15/20. And this becomes 16/20. Now, if you have 15 and you're subtracting 16, you can't do that. If you can do it, like if this was 15 and this was 14 or 13 or anything smaller, you would just do the subtraction. But since this number is bigger, we have to borrow from here. So this 3 becomes a 2, and then we add in 20/20 because that is one whole. So if I borrowed one whole here, I'm basically putting one of those holes here, and I'm keeping this 2 here. So now that I add it 20/20, I have to add it to my original thing, which was 15/20. That becomes 35/20. And now I can subtract the 16/20, and it is 19/20. And then I have 2 here because I had to borrow one. 2 minus 0 is 2, so it's 2 and 19/20. For multiplying, we have to just multiply across and then simplify. If I have to simplify this, I would. Right now, it's as simplified as it needs to be. For division, we're going to do rewrite the first fraction, change the division to a multiplication, and then flip the second fraction. So my numerator becomes a denominator, and my denominator becomes the numerator, and it becomes 24/4. And then I would have to simplify this. It becomes 12 halves and then 6 wholes. Okay, for changing to an improper, you do 6 times 1 plus 5 over this number. So this would be 6 times 1 is 6 plus 5 is 11 over 6. Changing to a mixed number, 15 over 4. So we're going to do 4 goes into 15. How many times? 3. 3 left over. 3 3/4. Okay, to change a fraction to a percent and a decimal is what we're going to do now. So this is a decimal right here, and then this is the percent, and then here is obviously our fraction. So what we're going to do here is we can do it 2 ways. We can either change it to a 100 and then make it 0.30 or 30%, or you can just keep it like this and it's 0.3 and 30%. So to change from a decimal to a percent, we move our decimal over 2 places to the right. That's why I got 30%, not 3. Does that make sense to you, Lauren?
Yeah.
Okay, this one is 35 over 100. To make that into a decimal, we just do 0.35, and then to change it to a percent, we take our fraction or our decimal. So in this case, I'm using a decimal, and I'm moving over 2 to the right. So it becomes 0.35 equals 35%. And that's great when it's either a 10 or a 100. We can solve it like that. But sometimes it's like 3/4. So to make that into a decimal, you're going to take the denominator and you're going to put the denominator here and the numerator here. So in this case, it's 4 on the outside and 3 on the inside. Then you're going to say, how many times does 4 go into 3? It doesn't. So I'm going to add a 0. 4 goes into 37 times. 7 times 4 is 28. 2 is left over. I'm going to add another 0, bring it down. And I keep bringing down the zeros until I either get a repeating decimal or I end my decimal. So for this one, 4 goes into 25 times and I'm done. There's no remainder. So the answer is 0.75. And then I take that 0.75, I move 2 spaces to the right, and it becomes 75%. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, a prime number is a number that only has itself and 1 as the numbers that go into it. So an example of a prime number is 17. And another example is 3. Another example is 5. And some people think that if it's odd, it's prime, or if it's even, it's composite, but that's not true. So 9 is not a prime number. 9 is a composite number. So it has nothing to do with it being even or odd. So what are the numbers that go into 17? Just 1 in 17, 1 in 3, 1 in 5. And then these are my composite numbers. It means that it has more than just 1 in itself that go into it. So 9 is a composite number. 12 is a composite number. So that is what prime and composite mean.
Okay.
All right, next one is I'm just looking at all of the things that are 4th grade. This is a point. This is a line. It goes on both directions. There's no end point. This is a line segment. It has 2 endpoints, so it stops at some point. A ray has 1 endpoint and 1 that continues to go. A plane is flat. It has no ends, so this can extend as much as it needs to. This is a right angle, and it looks like an L. Anything that is less than 90 degrees, this is exactly 90 degrees, and it's called a right angle. Anything that is less than 90 degrees is called an acute angle, and you can remember it because, oh, look how cute my angle is. So anything between 1 degree and 89 degrees is an acute angle, and anything that is above 90 degrees, so 91 to 179 degrees, is called an obtuse angle. This is a straight line, and this is 180 degrees. If you were to take the straight line and curve it like this is 180 degrees right here. You're just basically taking this and you're folding it. If I have 2 of those, so here's my one and here's my other, it is 360 degrees, which is why a circle is 360 degrees. Does that make sense to you, Lauren?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. These are called intersecting lines. They cross and they form 4 right angles. 2 are obtuse angles and 2 are acute angles. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Perpendicular lines are lines that do that. They cross, they intersect, and they all form right angles. So this is an L, this is an L, this is an L, this is an L. If there's a square in the center of this line, like this, not in the center, in the corner of the line, that tells you that it is a right angle, and a right angle is always 90 degrees. So perpendicular lines, if we measured all of these angles, they would all be 90 degrees. This is 90 degrees, this is 90 degrees, this is 90 degrees, and that is 90 degrees. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Awesome. These are parallel lines. No matter how long they go on, they will never cross. So that is parallel lines. All right. Next one is a multi-digit multiplication. So in 5th grade, you might have 3 lines. So I'm just going to walk you through that. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 2 is 10. Plus 2 is 12. 5 times 3 is 15. Plus 1 is 16. I'm going to cross all of this out. I'm going to add 1 0. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4. Plus 1 is 5. 2 times 3 is 6. Now I'm going to cross that out. For this next line, I add 2 placeholders. 3 times 5 is 15. I put the 1 here. I put the 5 here. 3 times 2 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. 3 times 3 is 9. Make sure that I'm all nice and lined up because this can start to get confusing. And I just fixed, this was kind of over here, so I just fixed it and rewrote it right here. And then I add all of that together. 5 plus 0 plus 0 is 5. 2 plus 0 plus 0 is 2. 5 plus 5 is 10. Plus 1 is 16. I put the 6 here. I put the 1 here. 7 plus 6 is 13. Plus 1 is 14. Plus another is 15. And then that is 10. So I go in 3, put a comma. So the answer is 105, comma 625, which is 105,625. In 5th grade, you're going to do prime factorization trees. And all that means is they're going to give you a number and you're going to keep making it lower and lower until it has no numbers left. And the no numbers means that you have made all of the factors into prime numbers, which means it can't go any lower. An example of that is like 2. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. You can pick any 2 factors that will make 80 go lower. So what can divide into 80? I'm going to just use 8 and 10. You could use 2 and 40. You can use anything that goes into it. I'm just going to use 8 and 10. Now, can 8 go lower? Yes. Factors are 2 and 4. Can 2 go lower? No. It's a prime number because the only factors that go into it are 1 and 2. So I'm going to circle it as soon as it becomes a prime number and we're done with it. This one we're not done with because we still have some more factors that can go into 4. So 2 and 2 can, 2 times 2 is 4. So I'm going to now circle those. Does that make sense? Are you with me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Now I have to deal with this 10. I have to keep dealing with all the numbers until they are all circled. So 2 factors of 10 are 2 and 5. And I circle my 2 because it's a prime number. And I circle my 5 because that's a prime number. Now I put all of the numbers in order from least to greatest. So I'm going to go 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. And you can mark them off like this, 2, 2, 2, 2, 5, just to make sure you have all of them. And then if there's any repeating ones, you're going to make it into a power, like 2 to the 4th power times 5. So let's talk about powers now. 2 to the 2nd power means 2 times 2. 2 to the 3rd power means 2 times 2 times 2. It does not mean 2 times 3. It means this number multiplied by itself this many times. So 2 to the 4th power is not 8. It's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So obviously these numbers get big very quickly. So an example would be 5 squared is not 10. It's 5 times 5, which is 25. But 5 cubed gets very big. So 5 times 5 is 25, times another 5 is 125. And then if you did 5 to the 4th power, you would now go 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. We know 5 times 5 is 25, times 5 is 125, times another 5 is 625. Does that make sense to you, Lauren?
Yes.
Awesome. So that is what we are doing for prime factorization and exponents. All right. Your homework is going to be for you to do right now when you're watching the video. You don't have to do it this second, although you can. You are going to write down your homework. So here is your homework. I'm going to give you one of each problem to do. All right. 586 times 125. That is your first problem. Your second problem is to do prime factorization of 144. Your second problem is to tell me what these are. You're going to define what type of lines these are and what type of angles these are. Okay. Then you're going to add that. You're going to subtract that. You're going to multiply that. Divide that one. You're going to turn this one into an improper fraction. You're going to turn this one into a mixed number. So you can pause the video to write these down if you don't have enough time. And then you are going to change these into a decimal and a percent. So what would be the decimal here? What would be the percent? What would be the decimal and the percent? And what would be the decimal and the percent? You're going to tell me whether these are prime or composite numbers. And that is your homework.